Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. The Outdoor Adventure Series celebrates individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration, stewardship, conservation, access, and enjoyment of the outdoors. Our guest today is Alex Harper. Now, I had the pleasure of meeting Alex at the Friends of Nevada Wilderness, their 2023 Wild and Scenic Film Festival. Alex is an education and outreach chair for Red Rock Audubon Society. He is a wildlife biologist who specializes in birds. He operates a business that seeks to make the world a better place by helping people notice, understand, and connect with the natural world around them through various endeavors. Alex, it's a pleasure to have you on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Welcome.
Howard, I'm so glad that we connected at Spring Mountain Ranch just a few weeks ago and that we're doing this. I'm excited for this conversation. I've actually tuned in a long time ago and I remember thinking like, oh, cool. Like that was a cool podcast. And then forgot about it, to be honest, for a while, and then ran into you. And I'm so glad that we're connecting here again. This is a super fun show for us here in Nevada.
Well, I appreciate that. And I was being at in Spring Mountain Ranch, which is a beautiful place. And for our listeners, there is life outside of the Las Vegas Strip, let me tell you. And this is a very special place, Spring Mountain Ranch, some great hiking, some great birding, and there's a little outdoor venue where they have films and events. And Alex was out there with one of his peers staffing a table for Red Rock Audubon, and I do appreciate my friends saying, hey, you got to go chat with Howard. So I love how those kind of circumstances come about. And I'm curious, your background now, you have an education background, biology background. How did you get started to go down that path as a profession?
It was definitely a winding path. I was a pretty poor student all throughout middle school, high school, college, but was very, very driven to biology and environmental science. And I scraped by. I graduated with an environmental science background from a state school in Florida. And really, I think a lot of my interest in learning happened outdoors. And I had a lot of mentors around me. So I'm involved with Red Rock Audubon now. But starting in around the end of middle school, early high school, I got involved with the Tropical Audubon Society. And that's the local chapter down in Miami where I grew up. And I did probably dozens of trips with them over the course of many years. And being around adults who were wanting and willing to teach was very, very impactful for me. I got to see how it was done. I got to see what it looks like when it's not done well. And I got that at a very early age. And so when I graduated with an environmental science degree, I looked westward out of Florida and got a series of seasons collecting data across the West, Big Bend National Park, the Chihuahuan Desert Network of National Parks, across Colorado, across Wyoming, and just fell in love with the West. And eventually ended up here in Las Vegas doing some work related to renewables. And so here I am.
Okay.
But I think I deviated from the question a little bit.
It's okay. I love that. We just, we're free flowing here. So there's no big agenda. I am curious though, do you find that this trajectory for your career was opportunity just came one right after the other, which eventually brought you out here to the Southwest here in Nevada?
Absolutely. I graduated with a sense that there were a few opportunities for me, and I kind of took what was available, and I felt really lucky, almost as if I didn't deserve them at first, but ended up doing well at these gigs. They were well suited for me getting outside. Just my brain works that way. And I found that once I got more experience, what seemed impossible to attain just a few months or years ago seemed totally attainable. Like the bar just kept getting higher and higher. And I kind of just went with that trajectory. I said yes to quite a few things that seemed interesting and cool. And I took risks to be away from home for months at a time, going to places that I was very unfamiliar with. And I think that having months to yourself in solitude in nature can really impact you. And I felt myself wanting more and more, and eventually ended up in Las Vegas doing renewable stuff. And that was something that I just didn't imagine. I couldn't imagine working for something like that. But that was enough to help me settle into Las Vegas. And I do other things today. I don't work as a biologist in the renewable energy industry anymore.
Okay. For our listeners and for my benefit, when you talk about renewables, can you kind of unpack that a little bit, describe a little bit more about what that means?
Sure. Yeah. Well, here in the Mojave Desert, here in southern Nevada, across the west and southwest in particular, we have a lot of public land, and a lot of that public land is managed by the Bureau of Land Management
Mhm.
or the Forest Service. And some of these public lands have limited protection. So what that means is parcels can be leased out to companies that might be wanting to mine or set up some sort of development. Ranching is also something that can be done. You can lease areas for ranching, but with renewables, certain areas can be leased off for several years, and so you might have solar or wind going into those areas. And I think that these are needed. And we this is a very nuanced topic. Definitely happy to get into that if you'd like. But long story short, we need these things, I think, and we need them sooner rather than later. And Howard, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to pause.
Okay. Of
Hold that thought. Just
course.
this outlet's not charging, and my
Okay.
computer just told
We'll
me.
we'll freeze the video for a second and we'll start up again.
Okay,
Well, we'll just keep it going.
yeah, it's too bad because I had a good train of thought there.
All right.
Uh, okay, sorry about this.
Hey, we have to have flexibility in these
Yeah.
endeavors.
Okay, that should be good.
Okay.
Let me get my video back up.
All right. What I will do is I will start the question, for our listeners. Can you explain what you mean by renewables?
Okay, I'm ready when you are.
Okay, I'm going to count to three and then we'll get going. One, two, three. Alex, for our listeners' benefit and for mine, can you explain a little bit more about what you mean by renewables?
Yes, I'm happy to do that. So here in the Mojave Desert and the Southwest, in this very bright and dry, sometimes windy climate, we have a lot of public land, and most of that land is managed by the Bureau of Land Management, at least here in Nevada. And this land, though public, it can be leased out for a variety of different reasons. That can be maybe for mining. It can be done for ranching, and it can also be done for renewables such as solar and wind. And this is a really complicated issue. I personally believe that we needed to go through this process a lot earlier, but the solar and wind resources do come with some issues that are nuanced and should be talked about. So we're in the prime area for solar and oftentimes wind. And that affects these landscapes, and they will affect the landscapes for a very long time to come.
And I suspect not only affecting the landscape, but just the nature of the industry, solar, wind, they perhaps have an effect on an area that's near and dear to your heart and to an interest of mine, which is birding. We are in a prime uh, highway for bird migration in the spring and again in the fall. And I guess it's a good segue to get into your work with Red Rock Audubon Society. And I'm wondering if you could also, as we kind of unpack that, for our listeners' benefit, what is the Audubon Society and what is the mission of the Red Rock Audubon Society?
Sure. So the National Audubon Society has been around for over 120 years, and it was a very small grassroots movement where a couple people saw an issue, and they realized that there were bird species that were threatened and that there was nobody speaking up. And so they looked at the resources around and saw that Audubon was somebody from the 1800s that had pretty much described most bird species and illustrated most bird species in North America. And so they looked at that. There's some name recognition, and they created the Audubon Society. And so it's a national organization, and there are about 500 local, like, community or campus chapters across the country. And for us here in Las Vegas, we have the chapter, the community chapter, the Red Rock Audubon Society, and there are a couple hundred members within this chapter here. So what we do is essentially what most other chapters do, except we have a, of course, local twist. We're in the Mojave Desert. We have a unique ecosystem here. We have unique birds, and so there needs to be some tailoring to that mission. But essentially, what we stand for is we want to have the best science help us inform what our education is, so that we can educate in the hopes that there will be future conservation or advocacy, but especially the enjoyment of birds and their habitats. We think that by connecting people to birds and their habitats, that the people can recognize that, like, they value birds, and maybe take the time to realize that birds are really declining overall. We've lost many billions of birds over the course of a few decades here in North America, and there's some pretty big implications behind that.
Sure. Now, as an education and outreach chair for Red Rock Audubon Society, how does that work play into cultivating awareness either locally or for folks who perhaps need or should or want to, maybe they discover, I need to get involved in a mission, or for the folks that are coming to the Las Vegas Valley area and they want to explore what Nevada has, what the Las Vegas Valley Mojave area has in the form of birds. What types of education and outreach is taking place with them?
Okay. This is going to be a long answer.
Okay.
There's a lot of wind up behind it.
Okay.
So, to frame the problem, we are in one of the fastest warming cities in the fastest warming states. So we're just behind Reno, and we have water insecurity. We have birds and other wildlife declining, not just in Nevada, but across the world for a number of different reasons. And our city is growing. We are at 2.3 million people now and growing. We're sprawling out in many directions, and we are turning Mojave Desert in this valley into sprawl. We're turning it into something that is like a mix of artificial and natural. And it's my belief, and this is informed by a lot of, like, really good data that's coming out and research. I've read a couple books on this, and I just find it really compelling. And that we need to spend more time around nature. That it's critical for our well-being. And in my opinion, we need more people valuing nature and wildlife. And the best way to do that is to help them notice what's around them and the value that adds to their lives, and the value that these things have to a functioning ecosystem. And the best way to do that is through good education. It's by being very thoughtful about what it is that we're talking about. And one of the first things that we realized as we started to create lesson plans and curriculum for school kids of all ages at a variety of different parks here in the Las Vegas area is that The first thing that we need to do is help people appreciate the desert. That's like step number one, is to help people open their eyes to that. There are a lot of people in Las Vegas that believe that there's really nothing to experience here, that the wildlife is somewhere else. It's not in the desert. They're in California, or they're in Yellowstone, or they're in Colorado. And it's almost as if we're trying to demystify that for people. And once we do that, now we can start to explore, because people's minds are open. They're looking, oh, okay, there's something to be found here at the Henderson Bird Viewing Preserve. And there might be something to be found here at Floyd Lamb Park. And so now we're exploring, and we're engaging our senses to hear and see more, especially when we're with kids. And you see them just start to notice, almost for the first time, just how much life can be around the city. So it's really easy sometimes. Nature just kind of speaks for itself. It's just a matter of getting people out and framing it the right way and exploring freely. So that's really rewarding. Like, I was just out with some kids today, about 25. I had some help from other people with the chapter, and we're just trying to stay current. We're trying to stay informed. We're on coalition calls. We're on task force calls, working group calls about specific birds, so that we know what's going on, and like we figure out where in our messaging can we put this, so that that awareness can spread. And how do we help people find agency by contributing to citizen or community science, or participating in our activities? How can they be informed on what we need to advocate for? So we're thinking about that stuff, and like trying to be really dynamic in our messaging and how we engage with whoever will show up.
And I appreciate the answer, and I didn't think it was too long-winded at all. It was perfect length, and I am curious now, with the education and working on the messaging, so people will get interested. Is there a challenge for young kids? And we're in a very digitized age, and we're distracted very easily by the phones, the games, etc. What is the challenge, or what is also the opportunity to attract young kids into appreciating the need for taking care of of our resources, the birds, the wildlife, but also to be excited about these activities?
Mm, yeah. Uh, there's definitely a lot of competition for our attention. And when we are in nature, I think it's a lot easier for us to pay attention. So once we can get, like, let's say we get some kids to uh, usually the indoor classroom at the Henderson Bird Viewing Preserve. The kids that we're usually with, they don't seem to have phones, or at least I don't see them. Maybe they're taken away. Let me think here. Yeah, we have done some things at community centers with like high schools and middle school groups, where the kids, the the teens, that have a little bit more autonomy, and they're used to just having their phones out. And I would say they're very distracted. But when once we get outside, and we can help redirect like where their attention is going onto something that is interesting. And part of the reasons that it's interesting, because it's in a place that they've been to many times, but they've never noticed before. I think that now you can get into this, like, you're all in this mindset now of, now we're going to go explore, we're going to go play. And I've seen some really remarkable things happen with high school students, where you start off as, I'm a stranger to them. They might know each other. They're being shy. They don't really know what this bird watching business is about. But we step outside of their community center, where they've been to many times, in a community that they probably live in. And we start to engage our senses a little bit more. And we start to pay attention to the trees and the shrubs, maybe the cacti if it's around, the sounds, the birds. It's amazing how often people are attracted to insects, like really interesting insects. Like, and we stumble across things like praying mantis a lot, or leafcutter bees in very urban areas too. And those are just really cool. And these high school kids get into it. So to answer your question, I think that when we can shift our focus on that in a directed way, then it becomes kind of self-directed after a while, and people kind of forget about their phones until they want to take a photo of something, right? Like then the phone comes back out. But I generally don't see anyone like texting or playing a game or scrolling through TikTok or Instagram when we're doing that.
Okay.
I've seen that many times.
Okay. I'm curious, what does a preteen or teenager need to have? And this is equipment, a book, perhaps an app on the phone, in order to get out into the parks, the bird viewing preserve in Henderson or Floyd Lamb, other areas. What do they need to get out, stop, sit, listen, observe, and make this an enjoyable experience? Is there things that they ought to consider having
Mm,
to bring with them besides water in their hat?
you just asked a really, so here's the paradox. It's an interesting question because on one hand, almost all the most important information that you would need in order to learn has been digitized and it's free. You
Uh,
know, a lot of these institutions and even companies and organizations like Audubon, they're making free resources where they're digitizing books and they're creating apps which you can use for free, right? And so all that's there. I think that a good pair of binoculars really doesn't hurt at all. Binoculars are expensive though. I think I like a good pair these days would be no less than $100,
okay.
something that's durable and is actually going to perform well for learning birds and observing birds well. So I think that's really helpful. Physical books are like 25 bucks for field guides. Those are helpful too. But you have all that information on your phone these days, but you also, I think, should modulate how much time you're spending on your phone in nature. So you're sitting there and you're observing and you're exploring and you see something interesting, like an interesting insect, and you want to pull out your phone and you go to an app called iNaturalist and you want to open that up, or the app called Seek, which kind of runs like a QR code where you're putting it over an organism and it scans the shape and the color and the size, and then it geolocates where you are and taps into an algorithm and a part of the database that says what, like, gives you a match on whatever looks like that in that location that time of year. And wham, like you might have a pretty good guess as to what it is by a machine. That's really cool, and it's really tempting to just like go down and just use that phone to use these citizen science tools like iNaturalist. But I also think that you should also put that aside and just sink into it and not seek anything, like not try to find the answer immediately. Just get out there, see some get some sunlight, look at some trees, listen to some birds, and it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that.
I love that. I love that. And as someone who carries around his smartphone with a particular app, and I start to hear a bird or I see a bird, and I just want to identify it and share it. And look what I found. But I do appreciate as my friend Bridget Butler, she is known as the bird diva.
Oh my gosh.
Do you
I
know
just
her?
met her. Yeah, I just met her 2 days ago. I did slow birding with her, and that's probably where you're going.
Oh yeah. So you and I, we have like 6 degrees of separation
How do you
now.
know her?
I met her in Jay Peak, Vermont at the Outdoor Writers Association of
Yeah.
America's conference. And I went slow birding with her.
Oh my gosh, what'd you think?
I think she's fantastic. And I mean, the appreciation for the work that she's doing. And I love the fact, and you're sharing it now, is just find some place to get out and just sit and observe and listen and just to enjoy the experience. And I
Um,
love what she does.
yeah, there's so much power to what she's preaching, and she's onto something. I just got to do some slow birding with her. I've been in touch with her over the course of maybe a year or two, just over socials, just because I share it in this belief, and she's been very she's helped to really inform like how we engage with kids here and our people. So she's definitely like her ideas have it into our organization. So
I
that's
love
cool.
it.
That yeah, doesn't it
So
feel so good?
yeah, and we have to find some way to bring her to Las Vegas, if only for a couple days, and enjoy that experience with her. So very cool.
Cool.
Yes.
That's
How
great.
can the preteens, the teenagers, the young adults assist the Red Rock Audubon in what's in and around the neighborhood to help assist them recognize the needs of the wildlife rather than just I'm gonna get in my car and go somewhere. But there's a need here, and reason I'm asking this question is I live in a neighborhood. I rent some rooms in a house, and very few of the homes have trees. There's maybe the uh, what do you call it, the palm trees, which I think there's some opinion of they're not really beneficial. I mean, they don't give back to the environment in terms of carbon sequestration and uh but there's also some really nice trees here, but there's not a lot of them around the homes. And how does an adult, child, or preteen teen, how can they help change how we think about the neighborhoods we live in terms of educating and informing about assisting wildlife?
That's you could go so many directions with that.
I'd have to have another episode of the podcast, Alex. So yeah, hey, it is what it is.
Yeah. How could so we're talking about a young adult or a teen that is looking to take some action. They want to take some agency. They're aware of some issues and they want to do something about it. Is that
Yeah.
what you? Well, I think in terms of looking for resources in the community, they definitely have some options. Get Outdoors Nevada is a great organization. They do a lot with kids. They have a very robust educational program, and they certainly can. They have resources. Get Outdoors Nevada. Friends in Nevada Wilderness, they do quite a bit. They have some stewardship programs, and a lot of great ideas in that organization. They tend to focus more on public lands outside of the metropolitan area, so that's going to be a little bit more difficult for a lot of people. I think transportation and like resource and time. Of course, Red Rock Audubon, we do things that are focused on birds, but it's birds and their habitats, right? So their habitats have to have plants, usually native plants, are best because the native plants are accommodating native insects. Native insects are pollinating other native plants, and this is an ecosystem in between our homes, in our parks, along our washes, even in the cracks in the sidewalk and around the strip. Like there's an ecosystem here. It's urbanized, but we still have plants and animals and a living world around us. And we can lean into the fact that we understand that this is an urban oasis, right? Like we can irrigate here. We have a lot of greenery. We have a lot of pre-existing trees. We have water. And this is an oasis that is attracting birds. It's attracting insects, and we can create within this urban ecosystem more chances of success. And so I think that learning your native plants, learn your mesquite, your catclaw acacia, the desert willow, learn a couple of the common birds and start looking to see what insects you have around your yard or your neighborhood, and start to figure out how to make a bird-friendly yard, a bird-friendly community, making wildlife habitat in your own space. And as you make wildlife habitat in your own space by really focusing on Mojave species, you are also cutting back on water because we need to start cutting back on water, I think.
Mhm.
And you're creating what I think of as just a small teeny weeny contribution to the climate resilience around here, where you're allowing a couple more native bees to find the native plant that they're looking for when honeybees are out competing them for all these other things. And they're here in the city. So like, let's give them a boost. I think that doing that is empowering. It gives people agency, and people are looking for agency. People see issues, and people have this desire to do something, I think. And all the information is on the internet now, to the point that it's confusing to figure out where to get the best info. But it's
Okay.
there if you're patient, and you can use that to help understand what's in your community and how and what you can do about it.
Okay. No, I love that answer. What work throughout the year is Red Rock Audubon most known for in terms of getting people out and involved and into nature and doing their part to make a difference for the survival of the native and the transitory bird species that are flying through?
Great question. So this is how I see this organization. It's an organization of education and advocacy and conservation through science. But we do that as an organization that's a community where it's relationship based, and it really depends on the strength of our organization to execute on those things. And we try to have fun along the way. So because we have a lot of things that challenge us, but we're trying to have a sense of humor as well at the same time and enjoy the process. So that being said, I think our biggest impact, our biggest footprint in the community is through education, and we do this a number of different ways. We have a variety of programs that we do with schools and community centers, where we have sort of like a basic lesson plan and curriculum that we follow. And those might last for 1.5 to 2 hours, and they can be done in very urban areas with not a lot of opportunities to observe birds, all the way to Henderson Bird Viewing Preserve. And that's where we do most of our activities. But what we've been doing for the longest amount of time is our birding walk or birding jaunt program. So what this looks like is we'll have a trip leader who feels comfortable in front of a group, comfortable taking people around a park in the area, and feels comfortable learning birds along the way, or maybe they have a lot of experience birding and they can lead this group. And so they will take a group of 5 to 12 around a local park like Craig Ranch, Floyd Lamb, Henderson Bird Viewing Preserve, Cornerstone, Sunset Park, Clark County Wetlands, of course, and Aliante Park, a few others from time to time. Those are the places we regularly do things. And they will take them around, and they'll help people like go through the process of identifying birds and how to use resources to do that, how to observe or detect or listen for birds. Some of our trip leaders are really good with sounds and can identify birds by sound, and help others learn as well. And we also talk about why these places are attracting birds. And most of the places that we do these walks at or these jaunts at, they have surface water, they have ponds, they have lakes. So there's a reason for that, because we're in this urban oases, and wherever you find water, you're going to find lots of birds because that's what they're looking for. So that's where I think we have done the longest standing amount of education. And then some of those people come forward and say, I would like to do more. I would like to be a trip leader. I would like to take on a higher level of commitment. And then we kind of see what they're into as a volunteer organization. So that's how we've been growing in some ways. Yeah.
Fantastic. Now, you shared before we kicked off the podcast, in addition to your work with the Red Rock Audubon Society, you have a side hustle going on where you keep this learning and discovery alive. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, my side hustle, I think you're talking about Nature and Mind. I have a couple side hustles, but Nature and Mind is the one that I think you're referring to. And Nature and Mind is a company that that I own. I'm the sole proprietor, and I have big dreams for it. It's sort of my big work in progress. In some ways, it's an expression of many of my interests kind of coming together, and a way for me to continue to make a living as an entrepreneur who is really interested in creating the most potent programs around to help people sense, perceive, appreciate, learn about the nature around them. So we explore the nature of our own minds while exploring nature, and we're keeping it in mind in our day to day. We're keeping it in mind as we make decisions, or we look at patterns of behavior or habits and so on. Right? Like I believe that so much that there's so many ways to make contact with nature that there are multiple ways to begin to feel this sense of stewardship and this desire to participate in ways to keep it intact, speak up on its behalf, and receive a lot of benefits from it. I think it's genuinely good for us. There's a lot of great literature and science coming out there from institutions and academia. They're finding that 20 minutes in nature is incredibly good for our cortisol levels, our stress hormone. Um, it can reduce anxiety and alleviates the degree of depression that some people experience. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And I would like to get that more out in the world. And Nature Mind is the way that I can do that. I have a unique science background and a lot of bird watching experience and a natural history, trip leader set of experiences. So I think that it's unique for me to explore. And I take a lot of cues from people like Bridget Butler and other people that believe that getting out into nature can be a lot easier than we might think. We just have to be more open-minded and change what we're trying to get out of it a little bit.
I love that. And I would add the word intentional. And the reason
Mm.
I say that, Alex, is my work is very much digital, online, whether I'm coaching clients or whether I'm podcasting. And I have to remember to get out because I'm right near Floyd Lamb Park. I'm right near Spring Mountain. And I certainly don't take advantage of it enough. And it's just what you're sharing is a great reminder that I need to do that. And I would encourage my listeners on this podcast to just get outside, enjoy it, and sit, listen, observe. If you have a good cup of coffee in the morning or an adult beverage in the evening, even better. But still get out there and enjoy it. Before we head out today, we have two features on our show. One is called the Aha Moment, and this is where you kind of look back at your work and your career trajectory from where you were back in Florida to where you are today in the Las Vegas Valley and within the Mojave Desert region. As you look back, is there an aha moment where you can say, "Wow, I get to do this, and this is the impact that I get to make"?
I'm going to deviate a little bit because I remember you asking me this, and I sort of remember my answer, but I want to give you a more current one, an
Okay,
updated,
all
and
right.
that's from this morning. I drove to the Henderson Bird Viewing Preserve in the morning, and I was able to see a very rare bird called a groove-billed ani that has dispersed from Mexico and ended up in the bird preserve, and somebody found it, and it's hanging around and being very visible.
Oh,
There are just maybe 5 or 6 records from Nevada in the course of as long as people have been recording this stuff. So not a lot. It's a very rare bird. So I got to see that and then rolled straight into taking a group of kids around the Henderson Bird Viewing Preserve with their parent chaperones and just seeing this range of positive experience from the kids and the adults. We were exploring, we found praying mantis and ant colonies. We found a bird called the Wilson snipe that was along the shoreline, crunched down, and they have exquisite camouflage, and it was very close and in the open, so everyone got to see it, and we could talk about camouflage, and these are second graders. And to see them so engaged and looking, it was it was just another one of those moments where I looked around and I thought, I'm in a place that I like to be at, with people I like to be with, doing things that are important. And who knows what is going to happen with these kids after they leave here. I'm sure that this will leave an impression on all of them. And, um, that might surface and influence them in some ways way down the line in ways that we can't imagine yet. I'll never know. I'll never know. So the aha moments is when you kind of you see it all kind of coming together, and then you also understand there's a little bit of a gap where you just you you're you you're so sure that you're doing the right thing here, and but you'll never quite know for sure. Like, we're just doing what we think is the best. We're trying to create the best program that's the most effective, that influences these kids in positive ways, because it might be the only time we see them. So it's those types of things.
Okay.
that-
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I love it. And we're making an impact in ways we couldn't even calculate the dividend that's going to be paid out as the kids get older and have more experiences. Any final insight to go that you'd like to share with our listeners? Could it be a quote, an article, another experience that you'd like to share with them?
I stumbled across one the other day. I think I saw it on social media, and it goes something like, not everything that can be faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And the wisdom that I took from that is that there are challenging things in our lives. There are challenging things in the environment, and they can be really hard to face. Like a rapidly changing climate is scary. A rapidly developing city can be kind of scary. But there are things that we can do in our lives where we take that agency, and if we face those things and find community in that, then we can accomplish a lot more. And so that's been on my mind, especially as I worked with this group of people at Red Rock Audubon. We embrace that, even as a small group of people.
Very good. Well, thank you for that. And speaking of Red Rock Audubon, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work at Red Rock Audubon, where are the best places for them to go?
Yeah. So if you are interested in activities or getting involved with Red Rock Audubon, you can follow along on our social media. We have a Facebook and Instagram. So Red Rock Audubon, and Audubon is Audubon. It's French. And so you can go to redrockaudubon.com and scroll through our resources. You can see some of our events, and you can sign up for our events. They're free. If you'd like to keep up with me, you can visit my website at natureinmind.org, and that's natureinmind, one word, .org. And you can also follow me on Instagram, Alex K. Harper. So K as in kangaroo.
Yeah.
Alex K. Harper. That's my Instagram. Sometimes I'm active. I'm trying to be less active, but it's a hard habit to break.
I totally get that. And thank you for sharing the website and social links. And we're going to definitely provide the backlinks to them, as well as to some of the other organizations that you referenced throughout today's episode. Alex, it's been a pleasure to have you on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast, and I am so glad we crossed paths at the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. And I will tell you, I'm a very opportunistic podcaster. I look forward to getting out there with you and exploring and really enjoying the best of what I think the Las Vegas Valley has, which is being outdoors in nature and exploring. So I really, again, want to thank you for joining us today and sharing a little thread of your life and what you're passionate about, and the impact that you and the Red Rock Audubon Society are doing. So thank you again.
Howard, dude, thank you so much. This has been great. You asked some very thoughtful questions, and I love what you're doing. I think that you're helping to connect a lot of dots for people that are regular listeners. They get to know a little bit about who's in the community and what they're thinking about.
Thank
So
you.
doing what you're doing.
Appreciate it. Listen, stay in the line. We're going to do a real quick close and you and I can have a final chat.
Cool.
All right. Okay, folks, we have just been chatting with Alex Harper, Education and Outreach Chair for Red Rock Audubon Society. And, what I hope you take away from this episode today, I don't know anybody that hasn't heard of Las Vegas. And unfortunately, what they think about many is the strip and the casinos and the restaurants and the shows. But when you get out of that downtown area, not that there's anything wrong with it, there is so much to enjoy and experience, and it has to do with nature and the many parks, the local parks, and as well as the BLM land, the Red Rock Conservation Area, Spring Mountain, so much to see and do. And I think if you haven't gained that insight from today's episode, really stop, take advantage of it, get out there and listen and explore nature. If you do get a chance, either in your local community, check out your local Audubon Society chapter. If you are here or plan a trip here to Las Vegas, do check out Red Rock Audubon, and we'll provide backlinks to it and the social sites. If you're interested also in Alex's work, do check out natureandmind.org. We'll provide a backlink to it as well as to Alex's Instagram page. Folks, for us, do check us out on our website, outdooradventureseries.com. We're also on Facebook and LinkedIn, as well as on YouTube. And you will also be able to listen to this episode wherever you get your podcast. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day, and we will see you for a future episode on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Take care now.